The December wind bit through Thomas. Whitmore's wool coat as he walked through Riverside Park, though he barely noticed the cold. At 58, the tech billionaire had grown accustomed to insulation, from weather, from inconvenience, from the messy realities of ordinary life. His penthouse apartment offered climate control. His chauffeur-driven car provided door-to-door service. His world existed in a carefully maintained bubble of comfort and control. But tonight, something had driven him from that bubble. Perhaps it was the emptiness of his vast apartment, where his footsteps echoed against marble floors. Perhaps it was the photographs on his mantel, his late wife Catherine, gone 5 years now, her smile frozen in happier times. Perhaps it was simply the weight of another year ending, another holiday season facing him alone despite his billions. The park lay blanketed in fresh snow, transformed into something almost magical by the falling flakes. Street lamps cast golden pools of light across the white landscape. Most sensible people had gone home to warmth and dinner. Thomas had no particular destination in mind. He simply walked, letting the cold air clear his head of balance sheets and acquisition proposals. That's when he saw them. On a bench beneath one of the street lamps sat a young woman, maybe 30 years old, with blonde hair pulled back in a simple bun. She wore a red dress that seemed far too thin for the weather, though she didn't appear to notice the cold. Beside her sat 2 small children, a girl of perhaps 6 with blonde pigtails and a pink sweater, and a boy who couldn't have been more than 4, wearing a beige knit outfit. All 3 were barefoot, their small shoes lined up neatly beneath the bench. Thomas stopped walking. Something about the scene arrested him completely. The woman held a single wrapped sandwich, and as Thomas watched, she carefully tore it into 3 pieces. Not equal pieces, the 2 larger portions went to the children. The smallest piece she kept for herself. The children accepted their shares with quiet gratitude. No complaints, no demands for more. They huddled close to their mother, seeking warmth as much as sustenance. Thomas found himself moving closer, drawn by something he couldn't quite name. As he approached, the woman looked up. Her face was beautiful but drawn, with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of exhaustion and worry. Yet when she looked at her children, her expression transformed into something luminous with love. "I'm sorry to intrude," Thomas said softly, stopping a respectful distance away. "But are you all right? It's quite cold to be out here." The woman's shoulders tensed slightly, protective instinct clearly kicking in. "We're fine, thank you," she said, her voice pleasant but guarded. "I don't mean to pry," Thomas continued gently. "I'm Thomas. I was just walking through the park and—" He paused, searching for words that wouldn't sound patronizing or presumptuous. "It's nearly Christmas and it's cold, and you have 2 small children who aren't wearing shoes." The woman's eyes filled with tears, though she blinked them back quickly. The little girl reached up and patted her mother's arm reassuringly, a gesture so mature and tender that it made Thomas's chest ache. "We're waiting," the woman finally said. "There's a shelter 3 blocks from here. They open their doors at 7 o'clock. We got here early to make sure we'd get beds tonight. Sometimes if you arrive too late, they're all taken." Thomas checked his watch. It was barely 5:30. An hour and a half to wait in the freezing cold. "My name is Claire," the woman continued, some internal dam breaking. "Claire Morrison. These are my children, Lily and Jack. We've been staying at the shelter for 2 weeks now. Before that, we lived in our car for a month. And before that," she trailed off, shaking her head. "Before that doesn't matter anymore." Thomas knelt down in the snow, bringing himself to the children's eye level. They watched him with solemn, careful eyes, children who had learned too young to be cautious around strangers. "Hello, Lily. Hello, Jack," he said warmly. "I'm very pleased to meet you both. That looks like a good sandwich you're sharing." "It's peanut butter," Jack offered shyly. "Mommy says it has protein." "Very important," Thomas agreed seriously. He looked back at Claire. "There's a cafe just at the edge of the park. It's warm, and they make excellent hot chocolate. Would you allow me to buy dinner for you and your children? I promise I'm not—" He struggled with how to reassure her. "I'm just someone who would like to help. No strings, no expectations. Just a hot meal and a warm place to sit until the shelter opens." Claire studied his face for a long moment. Thomas realized he must look like what he was, a wealthy man, from his expensive coat to his Italian leather shoes. Everything about him probably screamed different world. "Why would you do that?" Claire asked quietly. Thomas considered the question seriously. "My wife died 5 years ago," he said finally. "We never had children, though we wanted them." Catherine, that was her name. She used to volunteer at shelters and food banks. She'd come home and tell me stories about the people she met. The families struggling to survive. I'd write checks, large ones, and feel like I was helping. But I never actually saw what she saw. I never really understood. He paused. "Tonight, I think maybe I'm starting to understand. Please, let me buy you dinner." Claire looked at her children, at their hopeful faces, and Thomas saw the moment her resistance crumbled. "All right," she said softly. "Thank you. That's very kind." The cafe was warm and brightly lit, Christmas decorations twinkling from every corner. The owner, Mrs. Chen, took one look at the barefoot children and disappeared into the back. She returned moments later with thick socks and slippers. "My grandchildren's," she said matter-of-factly. "They leave things here all the time. Please, keep them." Thomas ordered lavishly, hot chocolate for the children, soup and sandwiches and pasta, warm bread, fruit. Claire protested initially, but he gently insisted. "When was the last time you had a full meal?" he asked quietly. "Thursday," Claire admitted. "Jack's birthday. I splurged on hamburgers. That had been 3 days ago." As they ate, the story emerged in pieces. Claire had been a nurse, working night shifts at a hospital while her children stayed with her mother. Then her mother had a stroke requiring full-time care. Claire had to quit her job to become a caregiver. Her savings dwindled. Bills piled up. The small apartment she could barely afford became impossible to maintain. Her ex-husband, the children's father, had disappeared years ago, contributing nothing. "I've applied for assistance," Claire explained, keeping her voice low so the children, now absorbed in coloring pages Mrs. Chen had provided, wouldn't hear. "But it takes time. There are waiting lists for housing, waiting lists for childcare subsidies, waiting lists for everything. I'm trying to get back on my feet, to find work I can do while keeping the children safe, but it's like trying to climb out of a hole, while someone keeps pushing dirt back in." Thomas listened, really listened. In a way, he realized he hadn't listened to anyone in years. In his world, problems had solutions. Money could fix things. But Claire's situation wasn't about throwing money at a problem. It was about systemic issues, about the razor's edge so many families walked between security and disaster. "Where is your mother now?" Thomas asked gently. "Greenview Nursing Home," Claire said. "Medicaid covers most of it, thank God. I visit when I can. But it's across town and bus fare adds up. The children don't understand why we can't see Grandma more often." Her voice cracked slightly. "They don't understand a lot of things. Like why we don't have a home anymore, or why Christmas might be different this year." Lily looked up from her coloring. "Mommy said Santa knows where to find children even at the shelter," she said with the absolute faith of a 6-year-old. "She said he's magic that way." Thomas felt something crack inside his chest. "Your mother is absolutely right," he said firmly. "Santa is very good at finding children who deserve presents." After they finished eating, Thomas walked them to the shelter. The children were warm now, fed, their bellies full for the first time in days. Claire carried their shoes, still damp from the snow. At the shelter door, she turned to Thomas. "I don't know how to thank you properly," she said. "This evening, the meal, the warmth, the kindness. It means more than you can know." Thomas reached into his coat and pulled out his business card. "I want to give you this," he said. "Not because I expect anything, but because I'd like to help more if you'll let me. Please, call me tomorrow. Let me see what I can do." Claire took the card with trembling fingers. Her eyes widened as she read it. "Whitmore Technologies? You're Thomas Whitmore? The Thomas Whitmore?" "Just Thomas," he said gently. "Please, call me." That night, in his vast apartment, Thomas couldn't sleep. He kept seeing Lily and Jack's solemn faces, their careful gratitude for small kindnesses. He kept hearing Claire's voice, steady and dignified despite her circumstances, never complaining, never blaming, just trying to survive. At 2 in the morning, he got up and went to his study. By dawn, he had made dozens of calls, sent countless emails, and set several plans in motion. If wealth and influence couldn't help one struggling family, what good were they? Claire called late the next morning, her voice hesitant. "Mr. Whitmore?" "It's Claire Morrison. You said I should call. I'm so glad you did, Thomas said warmly. Claire, I've been thinking about your situation. I'd like to help, but I want to do it in a way that respects your dignity and your independence. Would you be willing to meet with me today? There's someone I'd like you to talk to. They met at Thomas's office, where his head of human resources, Patricia Reynolds, waited with a warm smile. Patricia had been Catherine's closest friend, and she'd spent years helping Catherine with her charity work. Claire, Patricia said kindly, Thomas has told me about your background as a nurse. As it happens, Whitmore Technologies has a large occupational health department. We provide medical services to all our employees on site. We're currently looking for nurses to staff our evening clinic. The position comes with full benefits, including housing assistance and child care. Would you be interested in interviewing? Claire's hands shook as she held the job description Patricia handed her. This seems too good to be true, she whispered. I don't understand why you're doing this. Because everyone deserves a chance, Thomas said simply. Because circumstances shouldn't define futures. Because my wife would have moved heaven and earth to help you, and I owe it to her memory to do the same. The interview was a formality. Claire was qualified, professional, and desperate for exactly this opportunity. She started the following week, but Thomas didn't stop there. He called the owner of a modest apartment building his company owned, one maintained specifically for employee housing. I need a 2-bedroom apartment available immediately, he said. Furnished, stocked with essentials. Make it welcoming. He contacted a children's clothing store and arranged for gift certificates. He called Greenview Nursing Home and set up transportation services so Claire could visit her mother regularly. He arranged for Lily to enroll in the elementary school near the apartment, with before and after care that would align with Claire's work schedule. When he told Claire about these arrangements, she broke down completely. I can't accept all this, she sobbed. It's too much. I don't deserve— Stop, Thomas interrupted gently. You deserve stability. Your children deserve safety and security. There's no debt here, Claire. No obligation beyond doing your job well and taking care of your family. That's all I ask. But why? Claire asked through her tears. You don't even know us. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. My wife and I had everything money could buy, he finally said. But we couldn't have the one thing we wanted most, a family. When Catherine died, I buried myself in work. I told myself that growing the company, creating jobs, donating to charities, that all of that was enough. That I was making a difference. He looked directly at Claire. But last night, in that park, I realized I'd been making a difference from a distance. Writing checks, but never really seeing people. Your courage, your love for your children, the way you've held your family together through impossible circumstances that showed me what real strength looks like. You're giving me as much as I'm giving you. You're reminding me why any of this matters. On Christmas Eve, Thomas stood outside the apartment building, holding bags filled with wrapped presents. He'd enlisted Patricia's help, making sure everything was age-appropriate and wanted, dolls and books for Lily, building blocks and stuffed animals for Jack. Practical things, too. Winter clothes, school supplies, kitchen items Claire might need. He knocked softly. Claire opened the door, and Thomas was struck by the transformation. She looked rested, her eyes bright, her smile genuine. Behind her, the apartment glowed with warmth. A small Christmas tree stood in the corner, decorated with paper chains and handmade ornaments. Thomas, Claire said, pulling him into a hug. Come in, please. The children have been asking about you. Lily and Jack ran to him, their earlier shyness completely gone. They chattered excitedly about their new school, their new friends, their new home. Their joy was palpable, infectious. Mommy says you're our Christmas angel, Lily announced solemnly. She says you saved us. Thomas knelt down, setting aside the presents. No, sweetheart. Your mother saved you. She kept you safe and loved even when things were hard. She's the hero in this story. I just got to help a little bit. That evening, Thomas stayed for dinner, simple spaghetti that Claire insisted on cooking despite his protests. They ate at the small kitchen table, Claire and her children, and for the first time in 5 years, Thomas didn't feel alone. Later, after the children were asleep, Claire and Thomas sat in the small living room, drinking coffee. I got a call from my mother's nurse today, Claire said quietly. They told me someone had arranged for her to have private care. Better medication, physical therapy. They wouldn't say who, but I know it was you. Thomas didn't deny it. She's your mother. She took care of you. Now you're taking care of your children. That's how it should work. Let me help take care of her. I'll pay you back, Claire insisted. It might take years, but I'll pay back every cent. The only payment I want, Thomas said firmly, is for you to pay it forward. Someday, when you're stable and secure, when you have extra to give, help someone else. That's all. Claire nodded, tears streaming down her face. Catherine must have been an extraordinary woman, she said softly, to inspire this kind of love even after she's gone. She was, Thomas agreed. She believed that wealth was a responsibility, not just a privilege. She believed in seeing people, really seeing them, not just their circumstances. I lost sight of that after she died. You helped me find it again. As months turned into years, Claire thrived in her position at Whitmore Technologies. She was promoted to head nurse of the Occupational Health Department. She saved money, built stability, created the secure life she'd dreamed of for her children. Lily excelled in school, developing a love for science. Jack discovered a talent for music, his laughter filling the apartment that had become a true home. Thomas became a fixture in their lives, not as a benefactor, but as family. He attended Lily's school plays and Jack's music recitals. He shared Sunday dinners with them, teaching Jack chess and helping Lily with science projects. The empty penthouse became less important than the warm apartment where he was always welcome. He established the Catherine Whitmore Foundation, dedicated to helping families experiencing homelessness. Claire served on the board, bringing the perspective of someone who'd lived through it. Together, they created programs that addressed not just immediate needs, but systemic issues, job training, affordable child care, mental health services, housing assistance. On the 5th anniversary of that snowy evening in the park, Thomas organized a small celebration at his office. The event honored families who'd successfully transitioned out of homelessness with the foundation's help. Claire stood beside him, watching the families share their stories, tears streaming down both their faces. We're making a difference, Claire whispered. Real, lasting change. We are, Thomas agreed. One family at a time. That evening, as Thomas walked through Riverside Park, the same route he'd taken 5 years earlier, he stopped at the bench where he'd first seen Claire and her children. Snow fell softly just as it had that December night. But everything else had changed. He wasn't alone anymore. He had purpose beyond profit margins. He had people who mattered to him, who depended on him not for his money but for his presence. Claire had given him that gift, the gift of connection, of meaning, of family. His phone buzzed with a text from Lily, now 11 years old and wise beyond her years. Don't forget dinner tomorrow. Jack is making his famous terrible cookies again. We need you here to pretend they're good. Thomas smiled, typing back. Wouldn't miss it for the world. As he continued walking, he thought about that moment 5 years ago, when he'd stopped to talk to a struggling mother and her barefoot children. The smallest act of kindness, really. Dinner and conversation. Yet it had changed everything. Catherine had been right all along. The greatest wealth wasn't measured in bank accounts or stock portfolios. It was measured in lives touched, in families helped, in moments of genuine human connection. Thomas had spent 5 years after her death forgetting that truth. Claire and her children had helped him remember. The snow continued falling, transforming the park into something beautiful and new, just as one winter evening had transformed all their lives. Thomas pulled his coat tighter against the cold and headed home. Not to his empty penthouse, but to the apartment where Claire, Lily, and Jack waited with terrible cookies and warm laughter and the kind of love that money could never buy. It was, he reflected, the best investment he'd ever made. Not because he'd saved a family, but because in saving them, they'd saved him too.